Well, as you can see, it is not the nicest day. We just had 4 inches of rain, and today was cold. I think it's 47 right now. It's going to get up to 48. That's the peak. And it's going to start raining here again pretty soon. So what do you do on a rainy day like today? Well, you fire up the car, turn on the windshield wipers, and you go to the motorcycle shops. So today I'm going to go, first I'm going to get out of my driveway here, see if I can avoid running into Mr. UPS truck here. So I'm going to go check out the Harley-Davidson shop and see what the new bikes look like, you know, that kind of thing. Then I'm going to run over to Moto Primo and see what they got, because they have a variety. And then I'll go to Leo's. So it's 3 stops, and then there's a Fleet Farm there, so you know, you got to check out Fleet Farm. That would be just un-American not to. So I've been doing a lot of sitting around because of the weather. And what do you do when you're sitting around because of the weather? Well, you do stuff like research, which to me is get on YouTube and get on the subject and see what they have to say about it. And Harley-Davidson's been kind of a continual subject that's come up. And yeah, it's kind of been a little bit of a quandary. I watched one guy this morning who is really pretty good. He's a pretty straight shooter, nice guy, older guy like me. But he was talking about Harley-Davidson, and the first thing he said was he thinks they painted themselves into a corner. And I will kind of agree with that. You can say painted into a corner, or they headed down a dead-end road. I like the dead-end road terminology a little bit better. But what we mean by that is, you know, for centuries now, a century, they've been pushing the badass, you know, look and the loud pipe and the American iron thing and, you know, all that stuff, which appeals to guys my age, 50 and above. And I am above 50, believe me. But that's the target, and that's the people that really subscribe to that type of rhetoric. And where they're having a problem, which makes sense, is we're going away. You know, George Wendt, who was Norm on Cheers, just passed away, 76 years old. And, you know, 70, a lot of the people I know from where I used to live that have passed away were all in their early 70s, 71 to 73. So that's like a 3-year span. And that's where just about all of them passed away at that age. That's God, wouldn't you know it? And I'm 73 going on 74, so whew, I'm on borrowed time. The batteries are almost totally drained here. But anyway, so their audience and their buying public is diminishing. You know, and that's a big issue I think Harley has is that whole bunch of customers are just that customer base is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller, and the type of motorcycles that appeal to people in my generation don't really appeal to the people that are 50 and under. I personally think that the Pan Am was a wonderful move. We'll see what it looks like. I haven't really looked at one in the last few years, but I'll go check that out. But I think that was a wonderful move for them, because that took them into the sport, touring, off-road type deal. And I think that's what more of the people that are interested in motorcycles now, that are young people, they want that kind of bike. They don't want to do the rally, hang around, and blip the throttle and that kind of stuff. I don't think that's their idea of entertainment. I think they want to get out and they want to ride the ditches and the trails and the back country, maybe go on a little excursion out to the sand dunes or something. Kind of like what they do with four-wheelers, the high-performance four-wheelers and side-by-sides. You know, that type of influence. So, I don't know. I just think they're in a tough time right now. They're in a if they tried, like when they came out with the Pan Am and they came out with a couple smaller bikes for trying to get, you know, beginners involved, because the Sportster never was really a good beginner bike. It was it sat too high, it was heavy, it was clumsy, it was never a really good bike. In fact, the big bikes were easier to drive than the Sportster. And I used to work at a Harley shop years ago, and I didn't think the Sportster was a very nimble machine. So, you know, coming out with some smaller bikes that have a low saddle would be a great idea. I think personally, if Harley was really smart, they'd come out with a reverse trike of some sort that does not lean, because leaning trikes are stupid, but come out with something like I used to build. You know, I did the reverse trike conversions for 10 years, and I have one myself. In fact, I got two. I got the electric one, and I've got my Goldwing. And I would not ever buy a backwards trike. They handle like crap. They ride terrible. They're just not good. And so what does Harley do? They came out with like 6 different models of backward trikes, and none of them are any good. Straight axle. You know, their technology is from the 1950s, so that was not a smart move. You know, I think they could still build some of the big bikes, but I think they really need to focus on things like the Pan Am, smaller bikes, something sportier. They need, like Honda. Honda has, no matter what your opinion is on motorcycles or what you want to do, you can get anything. You can get 50cc dirt bikes, you can get 125cc street bikes, or you can go all the way up to the Goldwing, which is a full-fledged old guy touring bike. That's my opinion. But I'm going to go look at some of these other bikes, you know, check out the Harleys. And I know Moto Primo's got Indian, and I tell you what, some of the Indians are really pretty. I think they've done a really good job with just making a beautiful looking machine. But I belong to the Victory Owners Club web page thing, Facebook page, I guess. And boy, I tell you what, I had a Kingpin. I wish I would have never sold that thing. I did set it up as a sport trike, and it was just awesome. I just love the Victories. I think Polaris did a real injustice to the motorcycle community by dumping Victory. Wonderful machines. The engines were solid. I don't know. I couldn't come up with a bad thing to say about a Victory. I just think they're great bikes. And at first, I didn't like the Vision, but you know, they went with the cross country, which is basically a Vision without the gigantic fairing on the front or the trunk, and I really liked them. I think that was a very pretty bike. But like the Vegas and the Kingpin and those, wonderful. The 8-ball, that's another one. Basically same bike with different trim, but they just fit so well. You look at the profile on them, and everything flows so nice, and they're very artistically designed. Everything fits. Tell you what, rather than just ramble on and have you look at my windshield wipers go back and forth. Let's get over to the shops and I'll check it out. And maybe I'll take some pictures. I don't think I want to do a video in the stores. Kind of makes me seem like a doofus more than normal. And maybe we'll put the salespeople a little bit on edge, so I don't think I want to do that. But I may snap some pictures. And I'm really kind of curious to see what they got. And I'll get back on here and continue this video and give you my assessment of what I think and what I like and what I don't like. Okay? Fair enough. Catch you in a little bit. It's still raining. It's quite miserable out, really. But I did stop at the Harley shop. I stopped at Moto Primo, and I'm just leaving Leo's South. These are all located in Burnsville, Minnesota, for you that don't know where Burnsville is. And they're right next to each other. So this is Leo's. And just down the road here, we'll be driving by here in a second. On my left here is the Harley-Davidson shop. This is Twin Cities Harley-Davidson. There, I'll turn the camera so you can see their building. So Twin City Harley-Davidson, I have a little story to say about this place. And then right next door is a Moto Primo. And they sell pretty much everything. They got Indian. They've got, there we go. Let's see, they got Indian, Honda, Triumph, Suzuki, I don't know, they had a bunch. Most motorcycles, let me put it that way. And trying to keep track of all the stuff they have. They didn't have any of the new Gold Wings. They said they had a couple come in and they kind of left real quick, and they haven't gotten any other ones in. So I didn't get a chance to look at the new Gold Wings. I did check out the, get me squared away here. The Rocket 3s look pretty good. You know, when they first came out, they looked like a cobbled together mess. They had, the foot pegs were clamped onto a bar that looked like it was a crash bar, and they just kind of cobbled it together. They weren't very good as far as aesthetics. The new ones look pretty sleek. They look pretty impressive and tough. You know, I don't know how well they sell or anything about them. I just know it was a pretty cool looking machine. Generally speaking, I was impressed with the new bikes. I was really surprised at the diversity in the Triumph field. They had every kind of tour, sport tour, dirt bikes, You know, they kind of went the route of many of the Asian manufacturers like Honda, where they supply a bunch of everything. So that was pretty interesting. They did have one used Victory there. Just love the Victories. I think they are the most stylish and most uniformly creative of all the motorcycles. And then I went over to Harley-Davidson, and I tell you what, I'm not a Harley guy at all. It's just not the kind of motorcycle that is for me. But as soon as I walked in, my initial impression was, wow, these things are really polished. They honestly did look very good. The chrome and the fit and finish to me was pretty darn good. I'm not a real great fan of some of the styling, but the workmanship looked really good. And the paints, they do really good job on paint. Paint was great. The bike, when I first walked in, the very first one was heavily chrome, and a good portion of the chrome is actually powder coat. And I told the guy that right away. I said, oh, this is powder coat chrome. And he goes, how'd you know? And I said, well, yeah, that's what I did when I built trikes, is powder coating, and I did some with chrome, did some chroming and that kind of thing. So, you know, rims and that sort, and kind of knew, you can kind of tell, they have kind of an orange peel appearance to them, but the chrome does look pretty genuine, although it's kind of orange peely, so you can tell it's not real chrome. But they had mostly cruisers, road glides, street glides, a lot of street glides, and the trikes. The trikes were not impressive at all. I just think their trikes are just not good. But I'd kind of give them a thumbs up. And a gentleman, salesman, obviously came, talked to me, and he was very genuine, very friendly, and I would say even I went and talked to the gentleman at Indian. I kind of skipped a beat here, so I talked. The Indian dealership is tied into Moto Primo or Primo, same building, but they have to be separate entrance because it's a separate company. The Indians look really good too. They looked really good. They have a little more diverse landscape as far as the type of motorcycles they sell, and that's where I saw the Victory, was in the Indian area. And the guy there spent a lot of time with me, and I told him right away, I'm not buying, I'm just looking, and I'm going to do some stuff on YouTube. And he goes, please do, please take as many pictures as you want. And I could have done video and stuff, but that gets people uneasy, and I thought, no, I'll just take some pictures. But getting back to the Harleys, yeah, I was pretty impressed. I went and they had one Pan America, and I went and checked that out. And yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. I think it's a well-designed machine. And I know the purists don't like any of this stuff, and they don't like the liquid cooled, and they didn't like the V-Rod and that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'll tell you what, I think they're going to have to learn that if Harley's going to survive, they're going to have to go with the flow. That was one thing. Although the salesman told me that sales have been good, so maybe they are. And I'm probably thinking they are good, but I think, you know, the heyday is maybe kind of easing away a little bit. And I don't know, the Indian had, you know, a model, they had one model that was more of a sport tour bike, and they discontinued that, and that would have been comparable to the Pan America. And I thought, oh, that was kind of a mistake. I think that would have been a bike you want to hang on to. But I'm not in that business, so maybe I just don't know. So anyway, I was impressed overall. And then I went to Leo's. That was the last stop. And Leo's, they sell BMW and Yamaha and Suzuki and Can-Am. And talked to a young guy by the name of Sam, very friendly man. And he kind of showed me around a little bit. And I asked him if he only had 3 Can-Ams on the floor. I said, is this all you got for Can-Ams? And he said, well, no, we got a bunch in the back room. So I went back there and looked. And, they're 2019s selling for about $14,000. And I thought, you know what? For a Spider, that's a pretty darn good price. The Harley trikes were selling for $35,000. And here you got this, of course they were brand new. Here you got this used Can-Am Spider, which is a much, much better machine by far than a backwards trike, especially the Harleys. They make the worst trike. And 14 grand, 13 grand they were selling them for, and that was the F3 customs with the saddlebags and everything. And to me, that would have been the bike I would buy. And then they had a regular RT model too, which I think that one was 14 and the F3s are 13. And that's a good price. That's a real good price. And yeah, I would say, in fact, I told the guy, I built these things for 10 years, but I no longer have the facility to do it. So if something happened to my Goldwing where it blew up or it was an accident or whatever, I would be coming to see him to buy a Spider. I would definitely buy a Spider. Of all the bikes I looked at, that is the one I would buy for me, because I've driven the sport trikes now since 2009 when I built my first one, and I love them. I think they're more versatile. You can go more places. They're much easier you can park them anywhere. You don't have to worry about where your side stand is sitting or how it's leaning or if there's gravel or dirt or wet grass. None of that. You just pull to the side and I would drive it in the ditch and park sometimes. And people would stop and say, do you need help? And they said, no, I'm just parked. It worked out pretty nice. So I was impressed with that. Yeah, they're quite nice. As far as looks, be perfectly honest, like I say, I'm not a Harley guy, but I will put Harley at the top as far as just visual from the left side of the bike. I should mention that. The left side of the bike is the one they always take pictures of because that's the pretty side. The right side of the bike, not so much. They got that gigantuan chain case and clutch housing that just dominates the right side of the bike, and it just makes it look unbalanced. Where the Victories, to me, that was one of the things that really impressed me, is from either side, they just look wonderful. Either side, doesn't matter. Kind of like the Goldwing. The Goldwing is, they look the same right or left. They're very, really well balanced out that way. I think the Indian was maybe a little bit better from that perspective as far as maybe the styling a little bit. Pretty impressed overall with all the bikes. I didn't find anything that really stuck out as being unappealing except for the BMWs. They are, without a doubt, the ugliest bikes I saw. Especially the new ones, because the cylinders are so gigantuan. They're the size of a 5-gallon pail, The exhaust pipes are 3-inch diameter. Well, obviously I'm exaggerating. I was never a real big fan of the street cruiser BMWs, the twin cylinder airheads and oil heads. When they went into more of the kind of the sport tour models with the oil heads, those are okay. I actually owned one of those and I thought it was a pretty respectable bike. I think it was K1200, the K1200 I believe it was. That was an absolute hunk of garbage. Heavy, just a yucky bike. I don't know, I've never been a big fan of BMW, I guess. It's just not appealing. But I would consider, if I had an oil head sport tour bike, yeah, that'd be okay. I'd say that was the worst bike I looked at by far. I don't know what I would say as far as the best. I would have to say the Harley was the prettiest. The Victory overall, the one Victory they had, even though it was a used bike, would have been my favorite two-wheel bike. Some of the new models were pretty impressive. I guess there's a lot of stuff out there on financial difficulties with Harley and other motorcycles in general. Again, the market has changed, and I don't know, it's pretty hard to put your thumb on who's at fault. Is it really the manufacturer producing the wrong bikes, or is it just a problem trying to figure out what market there is and who you should appeal to, and what kind of product should you build? They can throw a bunch of stuff out there and hope for the best. Well, that's kind of an expensive way to do things, but maybe that's what they got to do. I don't know. I guess I'm just glad I'm not in that business. Overall, for a crummy, rainy, icky day, it was a good use of 3 hours of my time. I got to see some good bikes, and everybody I talked to, even though I told them I wasn't interested in buying, I'm just tire kicking, and potentially I'm not a buyer. I said, I just want to see what's out there. They took the time to talk to me, and they were friendly, and I give them a thumbs up. As far as salesmanship, they were very good. And how genuine were they? I don't know. I just know they were friendly, and I'll leave it at that. So with that being said, I will terminate this deal here, and we'll see what else we can come up with on the next one.